now. Oh, we are going to go live. What's up, everybody? It's Heaven's Help Desk. This is Curtis. I have with me this great crew. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey there. Hi.
So the format of the show and the premise of the show is we're going to give you answers to the hardest questions in the universe, as evidenced by what's about to come our way here. So let's take a look at the first one. This is by Robert Alexander, who asks, have you heard anything about the Telepathy Tapes podcast? And if so, do you see any overlap with how Swedenborg describes the spiritual world? I feel like the Telepathy Tapes, that's personal for me because there's a lot of people that I don't want to run into right now because I told them I would listen to this and I never did. And they're all like, it's so similar to Swedenborg. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll check it out. And yet here we are. So have any of you checked it out? And yes, so what do you think?
I have listened to a very little bit of them. It's funny because I find myself having a hard time watching very long because so many people have asked, what do you think about that? I feel like I don't want to make a judgment on these particular people if this is really happening or not. But I did take note of the abilities that these kids are reportedly having, and they all, to me, are possible given what Swedenborg describes about our spirits and the spiritual world, and that our minds are already in the spiritual world. So for basic things, that these are autistic kids, and the series is about just looking at, they seem to be having these abilities. They have difficulty communicating in the regular ways, but they have these other things going on, apparently. And so telepathy is one of them. That's why, hence the title.
The tape.
And telepathy is the main language of the spiritual world and of the spirit. And seems to me, if particularly if people have some challenges in the usual way of communicating, that certainly seems possible to me, that they'd be more attuned to their spirit, spirit communication, and that both would be with other people. Like I think they were demonstrating, like a mother was showing she can transmit messages to her son's mind, but also with people in the afterlife. So that all seems possible to me. Whether, I don't want to make a judgment, because immediately when I look into it, then hear all the skeptics saying why they think so. I'm just like, I don't want to make the judgment, but seems possible to me. Communicating with people in the afterlife. I guess that was the two. Remote viewing was another one. And that's certainly possible when people go out of body. So why not? And the most intriguing one to me, excuse me, was this concept of the hill. There's this place that the kids report gathering that they call the hill, which is a spiritual gathering place. And that especially intrigues me, because that's the way it works in the spiritual world. Like, you go to where there are people that you want to talk with because thought brings presence. So that is very cool. So it all seems possible to me. And I didn't want, as I say, I didn't want to watch the whole thing because I don't want to be pressured to say, do you think they're really doing that, or is there some trick? But all seems possible.
Nice.
Cool.
I
want to say, like, this time last week, Karin was down with the flu. So you're doing, to be here doing that is a testament to your resolve and strength. Sorry, Cara, go ahead. I'm just saying, like, I know what it's like to, like, you got a cough when you talk, and you've been through it. Okay, go ahead, Cara.
I like the concept of it being called the hill too. So I too have been made aware of this, and somebody sent me a link, and I've just never gotten around to listening. But the fact that they call this gathering place the hill, it just seems like that's what Swedenborg was always doing when he was going to these conversations with everybody about what's the meaning of life, or Meeting on a hill somewhere close to God. That sounds cool.
Yeah, and I similarly have probably only listened to one episode or something, but I was, what it just brings to my mind in terms of overlap with how Swedenborg describes the spiritual world, like, yes, to all the things Karin said, and sort of this overall sense from Swedenborg that I think applies here is like our world, like the way that we interface and understand this, like our consciousness and being, you know, being here aware of this world is actually just such a small, thin film relative to like the expanses and depth of like what's possible, like what inner senses are available to us, and awareness of the deeper levels of our minds and spirit. And it's those deeper levels that put us in touch with the spiritual world and with other people's spirits. And so like there's a lot of depth there to explore. And so, right, my sense too is that people who are nonverbal and everything, they still have all that same depth and maybe even more heightened sensitivity to those inner layers that all intersect, you know, and connect with this world. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. That's a fun question. All right, I got to get around to checking some of that out. I'll do it right next time. Hey, if before we go to the next question, I just want to let you know we have a link where you can donate to support the not-for-profit Swedenborg Foundation. It's swedenborg.com/livegive. There it is, right? My head's banging into it right now. That's a way you can support us. And if you're in the United States, you can get a tax write-off, and you just know that you make this kind of content possible. So thanks so much. This next question I love, and it's going to set a record for the longest question in the history of this show. Yogi Wano asks, core question: if the human body is a microcosm of heaven, and if each anatomical feature reflects a spiritual function or heavenly community, then what might we learn by examining the full symbolic and spiritual correspondences of the human dentition, that is, the various types of teeth, incisors, canines, premolars, molars, their position and timing, and particularly the so-called wisdom teeth? Guiding, so that's the question, and it's a great question, but then there are sub-questions, sub-guiding questions that Yogi gives to us. Guiding questions 1, could each tooth group reflect a distinct mode of spiritual processing, such as how we receive, judge, refine, or express truth and love? Might the location, upper versus lower, left versus right, and timing of eruption reflect deeper patterns in spiritual development, intellectual formation, or moral discernment? Specifically, given their name and timing, could wisdom teeth symbolize hidden or delayed insights, spiritual truths that emerge only after a certain stage of maturity, regeneration, or post-material learning? Finally, and if so, what might their frequent impaction or removal in modern life suggest metaphorically about the spiritual state of the contemporary world? Are we perhaps making less room for deep transcendent wisdom in our individual or collective mouths, in our system of belief, education, and expression? Lastly, what does this perspective offer not only to theologians, but to medical professionals and dentists who daily engage with the anatomy and function of teeth, but rarely consider their potential as mirrors of the soul? Excuse me. Let me take a breath.
Yeah.
I wonder if we've got a dentist here on our hands writing this question. This is the kind of question that I think any Swedenborgian would love. It's like, how do you go deeper into the correspondences? And also, it wasn't even mentioned here. Recently, my daughter lost her last baby tooth. There's got to be some correspondence in baby teeth, and then you get new teeth. So who wants to start, and where should we start, and what's going on?
Yeah, well, I guess it makes me think that one thing just off the bat is like, it's easy to start to think about making like a one-to-one, and I don't think that's what this person is suggesting, but like for all the people out there who have ancestry genetics that don't necessarily produce the most aligned teeth, that it's like it's not like, oh, your wisdom teeth were impacted, so there, you're this Y or Z, or oh, your tooth never came in right, so X, Y, or Z. You know, it's not like measuring the skull to see who's the wisest person, you know, but that sort of, I can appreciate the inclination to like want to try to see into that. So I appreciate it mentioning like the metaphor, like metaphorically, or that there's some spiritual truth being reflected in the overall development process, even if we can't go in there and investigate, okay, this one tooth isn't coming in yet, so that means spiritually you're in this kind of a state.
You're saying that individual dentition wouldn't be like, we can't make spiritual judgments about what's happening around any particular person's teething.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
you didn't get your teeth till you were 1, therefore you're not going to be as wise of a person as somebody who's.
I would be in big trouble there. I was recently learning about statistics, like population statistics, how likely is something to happen. They can tell you the state of the population. It cannot at all tell you about yourself, because like, for example, are my wisdom teeth going to grow in or not? Statistically, you have this chance, but they either do or don't for you. So I think it's a little bit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That there's, and it does seem like Swedenborg could say like negative things happening in the human body has its origin in evil and falsity in some way on a broad scale, but that doesn't have to do with any individuals. So it's kind of the same. I get. Yep.
Yeah, and I just think the fun thing, so that sort of caveat sort of named out, I do think the whole system that we grow these teeth and then we lose them and new ones come in, it's just so fascinating. And it really makes me think of what Swedenborg says about how true ideas serve us for a certain amount of time and they appear true, but then we're always sort of being moved along to newer, like more deeply true ideas. And in comparison, those older ones, we really could see how misguided they were, but actually they were just the right vehicle for truth to get us to the next state in our spiritual development before, okay, these new truths come in. Now I said new teeth, come in and like help you with the next phase of your spiritual development. So it seems like there's just a natural alignment there in terms of the way teeth support us.
A couple things that immediately come to mind are, the different roles in chewing. Like you got your incisors are sharp, and your front teeth, that's kind of grabbing, but then that's like how you bring something in. But then the actual work of chewing it is the molars in the back. So there's got to be like, okay, there's certain ideas I have that I survey the world with, but when there's something that piques my interest, there's a different process I run it through to really see like if I want to incorporate this in myself. And then also your front teeth are what the world sees, and your back teeth usually not. So it maybe there's something about sort of the things you make apparent to others versus the actual your private thoughts, sort of your public and private thoughts. Given that the teeth are something to do, as you're alluding to, Chelsea, with truth or ideas. Yeah, Karin.
Yeah, cool. I love the question. I feel like this is the science of the future. This is like when we realize, everything physical is telling us something about spiritual development. I think the most interesting thing, setting aside problems in the teeth, is just this process of the, how they come in and then they fall out and then more come in. Swedenborg, in his anatomical works, he went so detailed. I was just looking around to see if he said anything more specific about different teeth. He was so detailed in his anatomical works, but in his theological, I found a quote saying, "There are also spirits who relate to bones that are even harder, such as teeth, but I have not been able to learn much about them." So all that I can find in him is the general thing. And I find this very interesting, is that teeth correspond to the natural level of truth, meaning earthly level knowledge, facts, things like that. And it's so fascinating because the teeth chew up the food to prepare it to be absorbed. And that's what just learning just facts about nature and our bodies and, how things work in this world are the, the things that we need to then be able to chew up, so to speak, higher ideas and break them down and make sense of them. And when I think of it that way, it makes sense that for, in our mental development as a child, we just need these very basic sense-based facts to start out with, but then those do need to get replaced with more like concepts based on sense facts. So we get a new set of teeth. It's still about, natural level facts and things, but it's more concepts than just sensation knowledge. So that's really interesting to me. So yeah, I think there is definitely a process being talked about there, but it seems to be about, like natural level, earthly level knowledge that then serves us to help digest or break down higher knowledge and higher concepts. And we need that we need that throughout our life until we're old, and then they all fall out, and I don't know what that means.
Well, that's go ahead, Cara.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, the first thing that came to mind when I read this question was, I have some friends who are deeply into the Waldorf system of education, which is Rudolf Steiner's thing. And their approach is that nobody should be taught to read, like have reading pushed upon them until they have lost their baby teeth. So all this and my kids were like 8 before they lost their first teeth. They were old. And that just makes me interested. Like, I don't know why that's the approach of the Waldorf people, but it makes me think maybe there's some kind of connection to what's going on in the human mind, which is our spirit, right? And the other thing I just had to say was that I used to go to a dentist who, when he was in the Army in the 60s, his job was to take every single recruit's wisdom teeth out so that they weren't caught with a wisdom tooth problem, in combat or something. And he just said, I don't think it's the best idea to take everybody's wisdom teeth out.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, it's not an individual thing, but it's a great question. I love this person's question.
And it makes me think, just as what Karen and you, Cara, are saying, is like, like babies, every nursing mother knows how it shifts when a baby's teeth start coming in. And it's like, but so there is this time of your life where you are sustained just on liquids. And then, but the teeth, you need the teeth to break down solid food and like, what a different thing that is. It seems like, it does seem similar to, I just keep thinking of left brain, like language. You need teeth to be able to articulate yourself clearly, like that. There is something about all that knowledge, the knowledge in a cognitive way versus like knowing in that, like you were saying, Karen, like sensing without words or something. And so like we sort of go really far deep into this world where we're breaking things apart and can study things super deeply. And that seems to be this useful process to go through. And then even that, like getting of old age and losing teeth totally or whatever, it's like, maybe you've graduated, you don't need that anymore. Like you're back to that like,
Innocence of wisdom. Back to the soft food.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Yogi, for the great question. We could talk much longer about that, but we got a couple in the queue here. This next one is from Martina, who asks, we've learned that people's inclination to do evil comes from the hells, and that God permits evildoers to continue living and sinning in the hopes that we'll ultimately repent. But do diseases and natural disasters also come from the hells? Or are those some kind of necessary byproduct of nature that the people in the most ancient church or golden era suffer from cancer, earthquakes, etc.? Thank you. Okay, it's like a subset of the problem of evil, right?
Yeah. I do have a couple of numbers where he, let's see, 5726. So this here he says that he indicates that the people in the golden age would not have been getting cancer because he said if humankind had lived a life of goodness, Our inner depths would lie open to heaven and through heaven to the Lord. Our tiniest invisible vessels would stay open too, with the result that we would be free of sickness. We would slow down only at the last stages of old age until we finally became little children again, but wise children. Then, when our body could no longer serve our inner self or spirit, we would pass without illness from our earthly body into the body angels have. And so it seems like it wasn't by creation a byproduct of nature. It came when the minds of humans were starting to close. And again, like we were saying before, this doesn't have individual judgments on people. We all get sick or whatever, but this is just sort of the general existence of illness. And then 5713 it does say that disease, illness comes from hell. All hellish spirits, it says, bring on illness with differences because all the hells crave evil and are obsessed with it. They therefore work against influences from heaven and have the opposite effect on us. Heaven, the universal human, keeps everything connected and safe from harm. Hell, being opposed, destroys everything and rends it apart. If hellish spirits latch on, then they trigger illness. However, he says, hellish spirits are not permitted to flow right into the solid parts of the body or the parts composing a person's organs. Only when we fall sick do they act on the unclean substances connected with the disease. So I remember that being talked about in the show we did ages ago called How Spirits Are Connected to Your Health, about this interesting thing, like the influences from hell, once the sickness, I guess germs, diseases just exist because of hell. It corresponds to a hellish desire to destroy things. But getting into our bodies, like once our body gets a little vulnerable because of a germ, then hell kind of, I don't know, activates it or is the power behind it. But then he ends that number by saying, this doesn't mean you can't use physical cures to cure disease. So overall, it seems, disease is a result of the existence of hell. It corresponds to things from hell.
And that was a fascinating first number that you read. I don't know if I was familiar with it, but it sounds like what it's saying is in the state of heaven, when you're really aligned with heaven, it may still be there's microbes and stuff out there, but it sounds like you're just very, very resistant to anything like that. So he describes some kind of little opening and connection with heaven right there. And if heaven is the thing that keeps the human form, it keeps life healthy, that it just seems like you wouldn't fall sick. And just to say again, the idea that you can have disease come from hell, and yet that doesn't mean if you get sick, you're bad. Just think about just in totally physically, robbery would come from evil, right? But yet if you get robbed, it means you were, maybe walking through a bad area. It doesn't mean you're bad. So it's the same kind of thing. Like the fact that there's robbery out there in the human hearts doesn't mean that victims of robbery are any more or less moral people. It's just like that's out there, and so some of us are going to fall prey to it. And then the last one, the earthquakes and things. I would imagine, like, if you look into what, let's say earthquakes, that's the tectonic plates of the earth. So those things move the way they do. They have to. I don't think do not have those, but I think it would have to be something more like, do people fall in the path of those kind of things, or are they not? Do they not know they're coming? That if everything was as it was, it would be like, how they say all animals like know when a tsunami is coming or something. So you can just watch them go to high ground. It could be there would be something in that where human beings would not, be disrupted by this stuff. Because Swedenborg does, I think, say that. I guess that's why I brought up the problem of evil, is that he does say things like that seem to have no moral cause, like natural disasters and disease. That is an effect of hell on the world because of the correspondence. So, okay, Cara, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had the thought, just Darkness is an absence of light. For instance, evil is an absence of goodness. I'm just thinking of the human body, that often it's just some kind of deficiency or something in our body that makes us sick. So it's just like an absence of health that makes you not healthy. How can I say it? A vitamin deficiency or something like that, which I don't know, just struck me as similar to the darkness being absence of light. So it's not, so in that way, it would be hell, but in the way that hell is an absence of heaven. Okay, enough of that. The other thought was the natural disasters and stuff. The first thing that came to mind was the fact that like forest fires, for instance, are an essential way for some things to grow, like all the new growth that happens after a forest fire. And I wonder if there's just that's about the divine plan in that, and how much of natural disasters also is caused by human activity in the world, like flooding. Well, if we hadn't built houses on every marsh, we wouldn't be flooded out. That kind of thing. I don't know. There's so many factors.
Yeah, I think, and the only thought that I'll tack onto this too is like with the natural disasters question, is what Swedenborg says about I think he says it of like the most ancient church, that they did see correspondences happening all like in the natural world. That's how like they related and understood everything spiritually. So I think there's similarly just like this attunement, like being tuned in and being in relationship with the natural world and its rhythms, and then even getting spiritual insight into things as they happen. So again, like, yeah, like forest fires are good for ecosystems, or like they naturally happen, and all those sorts of things. But like you're saying, Curtis, if we were living more attuned, like would we be sensitive to things or understand them and be able to find safety, or whatever, be sort of guided by the spiritual world as sort of correspondences were playing out or whatever.
There's a movie that is called Whale Rider. It came out a long time ago. I don't know if you. So I just remember one part in it where a bunch of whales. It's about like a tribal village in the South
New
Pacific.
Zealand, I think.
Was it New Zealand? Oh yeah, right. Okay, is that in the South Pacific? So, but a bunch of whales wash up on the beach, and they're like, "Oh no, we must have done something wrong to make these whales wash up." That's all I want to say. That meaning there's a theme of like, oh, we got out of harmony with something, and so something bad happened. Like it could be that the way it works is not like there wouldn't be forest fires or there wouldn't be hurricanes. It would be like you're enough in the flow that, like you were just saying, Chelsea, that you would either avoid those things or they wouldn't come to you. There's somehow that you would be outside those things if we had this extra something that we're missing now.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Man, there's something else I was going to say, but it's all good. Okay. Next question. This is question number 4. Alice asks, one of the followers made the comment, Curtis channels Swedenborg. Is this true? What do you think about channeling in general, and does Swedenborg mention it? Clear out the record. Absolutely not. That's an insult to Swedenborg. No, just kidding. However, so I guess it's in some ways Swedenborg talks about like we all channel the spiritual world in different ways, but people mean different channeling. So I'd be curious to hear what you all thought about what channeling in general and how that would compare to Swedenborg's sort of perpetual spiritual influence on the human mind.
Interesting what the word means to people. To me, channeling means more along the lines of automatic writing, or sort of being taken over. But maybe this isn't how everybody understands. When I hear that, like channeling somebody, I sort of think of what Swedenborg describes as like the prophets of Old Testament prophets. Like they wouldn't really understand what they were saying, but they just say things. And that is very different from what Swedenborg's experience was, which was to have his own mind engaged too, like not just transferring things that came to him that he didn't understand, but to take it in, reflect on it, put his own flavor on it, the way he would write it. His own mind was affecting how it was written down and things like that. And that is how I understand Swedenborg using the term like the Holy Spirit coming through us. Like the Holy Spirit coming through us does not like erase our identity, but it comes through. That's God coming through us in a unique way based on who we are and who we choose to be, what we've chosen to care about. So it's shaped by that. So as far as like about Curtis, I think he's taking what Swedenborg wrote and putting his own spin on it, as we all are, when we're doing this. So to me, that means something different than channeling, because it's more like sharing in our own, putting our own mind to it. And how
People will use that expression. Like I'm channeling. What's a good example? Channeling Bach right now in what I wrote, like as sort of tongue in cheek. Like, I'm channeling so and so when I give you this advice.
Yeah.
So do some people mean?
Sorry, go ahead, Fern.
I was just wondering, do some people use that the word channeling to not mean automatic writing? But
I don't think seriously. I think in jest a little bit.
But I think, and not necessarily writing, but for me, it's like it implies that you are absent and something is coming through you that you have no effect on, whether it's talking or writing or whatever. That seems very different. And the thing that Swedenborg always warns about trying to contact the other world. And so I wouldn't think that he would. And that's what I think of channeling is like, I'm going to go find my Aunt Nancy and find out what she wanted to say to her daughter or something like that. So, he's cautious about purposefully looking to contact the other world. But he did receive a lot of information. But it wasn't just this empty chute that it was pouring through him.
Right. You know what it reminds me of is in the mediums, not in the popular usage people would know now, but Swedenborg talks about in the spiritual world, he'll say there's a medium where he'll say there's a society of people, and then there's somebody else who they all kind of speak through. And
right.
And at times he says, I guess this is with people who are a little more negatively minded, but he'll say that like the person that everyone's speaking through, all the people speaking through them think that they're nothing, that person's just a tool that I use. And the person doing the speaking thinks that all those people back there, they're nothing. I'm the one who's saying this. So there it seems like a little bit of it. It's not permanent, but it seems like that phenomena is kind of, he only ever describes it as happening within the spiritual world as far as I know. But
Interesting.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, I just want to say there's a show coming out on Monday, and you would be you would be well served by tuning into it. This is a show that is about the two witnesses in the book of Revelation. They sound dangerous. They sound threatening. The witnesses are on the right-hand side, not Dr. Jonathan Rose and I. But why do they appear like they do? Why do they have the ability to cast plagues on the whole earth and turn the rivers to blood and all this kind of stuff? Fascinating internal sense meaning that Swedenborg gives. Don't miss out on that one. Okay.
Can I add one more thing to this last question?
You got it.
So it's this interesting seeming dichotomy, but it's not, that Swedenborg learned and observed and experienced that all thoughts that come to us are coming from elsewhere, from spirits and angels. And yet we each are a completely unique combination of what we choose to embrace and think about and reiterate and things. So we are influenced all the time by spirits, and I hope that Swedenborg is among them as we're trying to understand what he wrote down. But we each then are like nobody is like saying exactly none of us are saying exactly what was in Swedenborg's mind. We're just doing our best to take the influences and our interests and our passion and our desire to share it and giving an interpretation. And so that's the good thing. And it's never an exact thing, but it's it's adding, and we're all supposed to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
Next question is from Terry Russo, who asks, is there a progress report on AI for searching information? And I think this is related directly to us developing a really fluent Swedenborg AI that you could search really. Is that what we're talking about here? Karin, I think you went and talked to our chief AI officer, Chris, and have a report back.
Yeah, I did ask him, and he said, decisions have to be made on how to spend the money and time. And right now, the AI efforts are going towards developing support tools for our team rather than public-facing search. It was just one of the decisions that had to be made. So Chris said, hopefully, eventually, but it's not on the docket for soon to have a search of our own. But newchristianbiblestudy.org has one you can use.
And the regular AIs are pretty good at Swedenborg. They'll sort of hallucinate direct quotes, but in general, when they talk about what Swedenborg says and what the overall message is, I'm usually like, oh yeah, that's right. Yep, that's pretty good. So
Nice.
Okay, let's get to our question number 6. Stuart, can you put that into the chat so that we can get it? Because I don't have it in front of me. In the meantime, does anybody want to say it? Oh, there we go.
I can share. Oh,
yeah.
Well.
No, I'll just do it. It's too late. You're started.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. I wasn't going to say this. I was thinking, it's just where my head went with the channeling question was like, because I kind of think of our, I've been deep in studying internal family systems, which we published a book on called Opening the Inner World. And as you understand it in IFS, like you are a multiplicity of parts, and parts blend with us. Like when you just like snap at somebody, that's a part blending with you. And then you're like, oh, I really wish I didn't say that to you. I'm sorry, or something like that. That's you, or, ultimately you can have the you that's sort of your inner self, aligned self, be aware of your parts and how they act, and then like start to be in relationship with them. So they maybe let you know things, and then you sort of speak on behalf of your parts, and you're not, just going around hurting people anymore, and, but that's such an that's channeling, like sometimes we just like channel parts. So I guess I just think, not Curtis, Swedenborg is saying, we don't know, that like it's so much about our consent and awareness, and so a lot of any mediums that I'm aware of that do any kind of channeling, it's also it's very consensual nowadays. I don't know, maybe it always was, but it just seems more like, okay, I am sort of stepping aside to let this thing come through. And that's also that's what our parts do. They step aside so this like ourself can come through. And anyway, it's interesting the way that, yes, inner relationships work.
Yeah. Maybe sometimes people are like, I was channeling my father when I told the kids they had to something,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. This next question is from Waven Dean, who says, do you have a sense for why all these NDE stories are coming out at this specific time in human spiritual evolution? I mean, there's a lot. Just even seeing the difference from when we got onto YouTube versus now. They're just, everybody's had a near-death experience, and there's so many stories out there. Is it just because now it's okay? It's okay to talk about them now, or are people starting to have more of them because of modern medicine? Like, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, because we're doing our new channel, the NDE files, and learning about some pretty long ago NDE stories. They have been happening for a long time, but it sure does. And so part of it might be people feel more comfortable these days talking about it. But it sure seems like there's way more than there used to be. And yeah, part of it, like it's way easier to bring someone back now from the brink of death than it used to be with the shockers to the chest and everything. But I just feel like it must, I mean, to me, it seems like the veil is thinning. I mean, that we're just, with Swedenborg and others predicting a move back to more, more alignment with heaven and the good part of the spiritual world in our future. It just makes sense to me that would be a gradual process, and if we're to be eventually opened up freely again to the spiritual world, like in the golden age times, wouldn't that happen gradually? And it just seems to me the veil is thinning. Just seems to me. I don't know.
Is that our definitive answer?
I'm mystified. I don't know.
Yeah, and just all that people are. I mean, the way lives are changed and the perspective. Yeah, it also seems maybe just time. People are ready to think about such things.
There's a
So,
couple of things that I feel like have boomeranged a bit, or I guess not, but like swerved and curved a bit, even in the last couple of years. Is I think, at least in in America or the West, you sort of had I feel like a bottoming out of interest in spiritual religious thought in some corners. Like when I got onto YouTube, new atheism was huge, and like the coolest thing was to kind of poke holes in the idea of the existence of God, and just it really seemed like, all right, we're out of here. That is so different now. Like things have changed so dramatically. There's this huge resurgence in the interest in theism, but even also, I've read some things about how the even recent scientific developments. None of them are saying like, oh, this means Christianity is real, but it's just pointing so strongly away from a purely materialistic explanation of reality being probable or fully explanatory, that there's a lot more people willing to talk about like, okay, there's something out there. So I wonder if even just culture and like maybe the Christianity had to go through its whatever it needed to go through, and then science has had to go through its phases to discover things. Are we just kind of, from multiple factors, including the spiritual climate, if Swedenborg is right about the new church and everything, maybe it's just all like we've gotten to the point where this stuff is becoming more obvious in so many ways, and telepathy tapes and stuff included, and so that's like it's many things kind of tearing little holes in the veil at once. All right, so thanks, Wavendine. Let's do the next question. This is from Ebo, who asks, Swedenborg's writings emphasize inner freedom, spiritual individuality, and the idea that the divine works uniquely within every person's cultural and personal framework. How can, or they can't and shouldn't, the new church meaningfully support people from non-Western, marginalized, or indigenous backgrounds whose ways of knowing are often more embodied, relational, and community-rooted rather than intellectually centered, so that they can benefit from Swedenborg's insights without repeating the old Christian pattern of imposing Western norms? In other words, how can the new church engage with these communities in a way that honors their culture, values, and spiritual structures rather than trying to reshape them?
Yeah, I guess a thought that occurs to me with that is like, I mean, it's like, I guess where my head went was like, well, who needs the help the most? Like maybe Swedenborg could really help the people who are very disembodied and super intellectual and like, get into their bodies a little bit more. Like maybe it's like, let's be present to where the issues are. And that's not to say that, whatever, the human journey is happening everywhere. And it's like, yeah, it's not like, I don't know. I see Swedenborg helping people wake up to the truth of reality, and part of that is respecting, people's individual journeys and connections with spirituality. So if that's already happening, then you know, that's good. Like, people are doing good. You don't need to sort of replace that. There's all that connection is real. And but if there's, you know, suffering and, you know, and that sort of thing, then it's like, yes, bringing curiosity to that and seeing how these ideas could be helpful. Like, I think that's I think there's sort of a beautiful meeting and coming together that that can happen. Like, these things are more alike than they are different, I guess, is how it.
Cool.
I definitely lean toward the we can't and shouldn't disturb cultures like that. But unless they want something, you know, they want something that's more in a sort of intellectual space or something like that. I don't know how to say it. I just think of, Indigenous people. I guess they're not human beings aren't all straight from heaven, but unless they ask for something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking of Swedenborg's writings are very particular taste. You have to have a very particular taste to get into them. And I know this because, like all of you, I've been trying to get people interested in them for a long time. And some people, it's like, this is so great. And many people, even after a lot of exposure to them, still find them like, nah, this isn't anything. So those as books I think are going to have a limited appeal, a deep appeal to certain people in the world, and limited appeal to other people. However, like, the ideas in Swedenborg aren't really intellectual. Like, the idea that like you useful service is the way to happiness.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a pretty universal idea, but not so simple that it can't be a helpful contribution. So it could be there's individual ideas that easily spread to all kinds of personalities and cultures and things out beyond the wholesale, people want to take on the whole book. There's probably quite a lot of ideas. I think about the Alcoholics Anonymous as, although there's no proof that was directly inspired by Swedenborg, it definitely has, principles that are similar to Swedenborg, but it was packaged in such a way that it had a much broader appeal and utility than so far has been found for Swedenborg's books directly. So I would think the future of, I would say that, there's going to be limited uptake of the full set of works, and it does become very intellectual once you put it all together, but plenty of concepts in there exist out in the world anyway, but can be helped by Swedenborg's framework. So I think there'd probably continue to be a big spread in that way.
Yeah, right. The pieces of what you've all said resonate with me. First, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, if somebody, think of what the core concepts anyway are. I mean, in Swedenborgian Christianity is love God, love your neighbor. If a culture is already doing that and happy with how they're doing it, no need to, add anything unless somebody wants some. Swedenborg does offer a lot of how and why, like the reasons behind why that things do work that way. But it's more like if ideas are causing trouble. And this is one thing I've, learned over the years as a moderator, like if we don't, as some other Christians or other religions have the burden of feeling like I have to convert people to these ideas or their soul is in danger. Like, it's wonderful to not have to worry about that, knowing that God is leading everybody, in all these different ways. There's all these different religions. So to just share, but sometimes, definitely come up against situations where people have ideas that are causing them harm or distress or something like that. I remember one where I was talking to someone online who had a whole spiritual, philosophy and everything, and had a group she was with, and that was all well and good. But then they were listening to this, I guess a medium or something that was telling them they were all widows. It was telling them that their husbands were cavorting with beautiful angels in the afterlife, and this was distressing them. And I was saying, nope. It just felt like, no, I have some ideas that I think would be healthier for you about that. That's not. And then one more thing I'll say is thinking of Indigenous people. This, mostly all these horror stories about Christian missionaries, right? Going into tribes and just forcing different beliefs on them and not helping. But there was one movie I watched a while back, 2005 or something. It was called The End of the Spear. And it really affected me. It was a story of, some missionaries had gone into to contact these tribes. It was because oil companies were encroaching on their land, and then the tribes were, which is bad, and the tribes were being violent. But the tribes were also very violent with each other. And the missionaries went in, and they were killed instantly. And later, this is based on a true story. The families of a couple of the killed men went and moved and lived with these tribes, forgiving them and wanting to help them. And the thing was, they had a code of life where if they got, opposing tribes, if somebody insulted you, you go kill them. And they were actually dying out, because of this philosophy they had. And when this group brought in the Christian idea of Jesus, who did not fight back, did not retaliate, that changed the whole trajectory of these people. And it really struck me. I thought, oh, wow, there's a good, that was a good use of the Christian doctrine needed. So I guess, again, like one of you said, is there a need? Is there some suffering? I guess that was you, Chelsea. Does someone need some help? Are there some ideas or beliefs that are not serving their happiness and not serving love of God, love of the neighbor, or giving a really scary idea of God, or, so those are cases. So it's right. You just see what would be useful and what is not needed. Do they already have that golden rule down and a view of God that is working for them and making them live good, useful lives? No need to touch it. But if there's curiosity or troubles, there's so much to offer from Swedenborg's writings.
Yeah, and I think there's this piece of, if you identify as the new church, or if you found benefit from Swedenborg's ideas and it's informing your spiritual life and the way you live and are in the world, then you can trust that, Providence is going to lead you. It's all about that usefulness, but it's about your life and then, who you're interfacing with in your life. But then totally respecting other people's freedom and their rationality to make choices for themselves. So just that humility, but still, I think, that we are going to get presented with, who knows what's going to happen in individual lifetimes, or who you get, presented with who is suffering and what you're inspired to do in that moment. But I was just reading where Swedenborg talks about, I love this definition of charity and faith as these desires. Charity is the desire for good, and faith is the desire to know what's true for the sake of life. And so if those desires are what you're living in your life, then you're going to be a force for good in the world, because that's coming from heaven, so but it might take a myriad forms. There's not sort of okay, we got to figure it out and do this thing or something, how do you center that and be guided by that in whatever you're doing in your life? Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. That's actually the time we have for today. So I think
we haven't gotten to an hour yet. Could we fit in the last thing?
We could. That just
Okay.
If you're watching and you were going to come to the live chat afterwards, that will be a little delayed. I was going to ask if you guys want to do this last question or not.
We can probably do a quickie.
Okay. Well, it's going to take me a while just to read it. But now this is from Kathy, who asks, I read a Swedenborg perpetual calendar each morning, or I read. Yeah. One of the challenges of taking anything out of context like a daily reading does is that it can become unclear, confusing, or even seeming to mean something different. Then the intent. This morning's daily reading is an example of this. January 4th, the divine truth is the same as divine humanity. Secrets of Heaven 2643. My understanding is that divine truth is only a part of divine humanity. Don't the writings actually teach that truth by itself is dead and only becomes living when married to love, and the divine human is the divine love and the divine wisdom together and also coming forth into use to become real? It reminds me of that poem, The Blind Man and the Elephant. Each blind man touched a different part of the elephant and said what it was like, a rope, a fan, a trunk, etc., and all were partly in the right, but all were in the wrong. I'm interested how off the left eye balance is working with parts of the writings and keeping a balance with enough context for good meaning.
It's a constant challenge.
Well, it constantly
Context.
it constantly makes us useful, because there's so much of Swedenborg you can open to a page and get a very different impression than what he means. I mean, the example I always give, and this was something we were dealing with very early in the channel, is that when you open the World of Spirits section in the book Heaven and Hell, it says, the world of spirits is neither heaven nor hell, but a place halfway in between where we are prepared before we're either raised up into heaven or cast down into hell. And elsewhere, he goes to great pains to say nobody is ever cast into hell. People cast themselves into hell only because they love it. But if you wouldn't know that from reading the opening of that section. So, so in some ways, without context, it's very hard to get what he means.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Karen. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say, and it's the same with the Bible. It's the same with any individual's life. You can, they did that, but if you take it in the context of their whole life and personality, so it's just like all of life is like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have to keep looking for the bigger context, and it's a big part of what Off the Left Eye is trying to do, right? To keep expanding the context. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, just I think, right, any one of these quotes or ideas that you hear us say, it's also not the full truth. There's no way we could sort of totally cover it, but that it's like a thread, you pull the thread, you see where it's all connected, or you follow a path and you see where it leads you. And so I think it's a great question. And I don't know the context of Secrets of Heaven 2643. I didn't look it up ahead of time or anything, but it does make me wonder that, again, with translation, what's just reminding me is there is the New Century Edition can be pretty precise when it uses the divine human one versus divine humanity. It's the same way how Swedenborg talks about sometimes when the Bible talks about the Son of God, Jesus being the Son of God or being the Son of Man, and they've called that the Son of Humanity, like that. And Cara, maybe you can correct me, but it might be that in this instance, what Kathy's tuning into is actually that definition of humanity, meaning the human part that had to get connected to the divine love in order to become fully human, that humanity that is fallen of its own accord. And that's sort of the truth when it's not united to love. You need to have, because Swedenborg says, Jesus had to put off his humanity, or put off the human that he got from Mary in order to be divine. And so I think that's actually the meaning of divine humanity in this quote.
Well, yeah. I didn't look it up either, but that's what came to me immediately was, this is equating the levels of the Trinity, that the divine humanity or the human manifestation of the divine is Jesus, who corresponds to the truth level, whereas divinity itself is the Father and above all that,
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So that was my take in that. But it's true that any kind of little reader like this, you can't give somebody a 1 sentence or even a 5 sentence thing in a daily reader and have them understand the entire context of the whole thing. So it's a risk we take having a daily reader. That's
but I like what Chelsea said about it's a thread. It's one piece of it. Like even the parts of the elephant, that is a real piece, that tail. And it made you wonder where does this lead? Oh, you'll find the big rump of the elephant. Yeah. So discussion, we're supposed to discuss, we're supposed to think, we're supposed to
Do it over. Just bringing back the tea thing.
yeah, make a zillion videos.
Well, speaking of discussing, chewing, this has been a pleasure doing that with the three of you. Thanks, everybody, for your thoughtful questions. It's made for some really cool conversations here. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.